the intersection of endurance sport, health, fitness, and life. Following the evidence where it leads with the science of self-propelled motion. This is the Endurance Experience Podcast, powered by EventHorizon.tv and hosted by Tony Rich.
Hello everyone, Coach Tony Rich here, and I am back on the Endurance Experience Podcast. Took a little break. I have some unbelievable content coming up on the podcast, so make sure you subscribe on Apple iTunes. That it really helps us out because it increases our ranking in the algorithm. So the Olympics are coming up, and it's one of the most exciting times for me because I love the summer Olympics, and especially the swimming. And so I wanted to talk about swimming on the podcast as we are just coming out of the Olympic trials for swimming a couple weeks ago. So I wanted to bring a good friend of mine onto the podcast, one of the best swimming minds out there. His name is Chris Morgan. I've known Chris for quite some time now, and I became acquainted with Chris through master swimming and coaching with him on the master swim deck, and was able to siphon a significant amount of swim knowledge from Chris over the years. To this day, I still have things written down and phone screenshots of his whiteboard, tons of things that I have actually stolen from Chris and have repurposed. So, and I still, have a fraction of the swim knowledge that he has. And Chris has probably got over 30 years of swim coaching experience, and he's coached Division I swimming at Harvard, at Stanford. He's led big aquatic departments like the YMCA, master swimming at Boston University, at Gator Swim Club. At the pinnacle of his career, he was on the 2008 Olympics coaching swim team in Beijing. That's incredible. And so he's an Olympic swim coach. And so we talk on the podcast about all of the big stories coming out of the swim Olympic trials, including Ryan Lochte not making the team, Simone Manuel not qualifying in the 100, and all the other big stories. Talk about Caleb Dressel, Katie Ledecky, and the other big swimmers, and some of the other less well-known swimmers that he thinks are going to make a mark. We talk about triathletes and what triathletes can do to improve their swimming, and the common question that I always get from triathletes, and how come my swim time is not improving? I pick Chris's brain on that. And then finally we talk about KAATSU, which is a recovery technology for swimmers, and Chris has done a lot of work with swimmers and athletes. And so we talk about the benefits and the value proposition of KAATSU. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. Without further delay, I give you Coach Chris Morgan. I am on with Chris Morgan. Chris, thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. I was really very humbled and excited to reconnect with you, Tony, and really excited about what I've listened to. I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts and just think it's awesome. So
thanks.
I feel real fortunate.
So Chris and I go way back, and I learned a lot of swim knowledge from Chris, and we've coached together on the swim deck at Master Swimming. and he knows more than just about anybody I know about swimming. And he has cumulative experience of approximately 30 years or so.
Yeah, it's been about 3 decades. So I'm
Wow.
starting to date myself. And when I watch the Olympics, or watch these trials, and you just shut me up if I start going on a tangent. I remember the first time the Olympics really made an impact was probably in 1984 when I was just a kid in California. And the only thing I really remember was this guy with blonde hair, Rowdy Gaines, because his name was so cool, Rowdy. And now all of us that follow swimming, even people from other aquatic sports, whether it's, even I consider triathlon an aquatic sport, and synchronized swimming, water polo. Everyone knows Rowdy Gaines because does the commentary on NBC. So probably the first real Olympiad was in 1988. I would sit and record on a VHS tape. I don't even remember if I was getting up early or staying up late, but my folks would let me record. I was recording every session I could, and then I would rewatch it. So that's dating myself. That's kind of, it's been about 3 decades but that's even before I was coaching. So, I've been in swimming since I was 4 years old.
Yeah. So being on an Olympic team as a swim coach, give the listeners some perspective on what that's like.
It's it's crazy. It's it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You think of athletes, and this is in no disrespect or no sort of belittling what their efforts are, but coaching also, you've got your goals, and you trying to put people on teams, and then to be selected yourself as a coach is it's huge. And the day you hear it and find out that you will also be an Olympian it's an amazing feel that I still remember, and I still get the chills thinking about it. But it's a great experience. It's something that worth every late night, early morning, being sick, going to practice, both as a swimmer and coach, all worth it for that experience at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, in swimming, like no other sport, the difference between first, second, third, fourth, or fifth is often tenths of seconds, right?
Yeah, it's nothing. It's other people look at it and think, if you go 1 minute, I always tell people who don't know swimming, you say, well, 59.99 or 100.00, it's 1/100th of a second. They're like, what's the same thing? I said, no. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's the difference, between gold and silver, or second and third. And at the Olympic trials, which I'm excited to talk with you about, Tony, is third is last. In most of the events, there's the 100 and 200 freestyle that we'll dive into. That's a little bit different, but and third place is I've seen people end their careers on that position, and with a real bitter taste in their mouth. And it's some of them never come back to the sport and turn away from it for the rest of their lives. And it's really sad to see that for 1/100th of a second, when maybe they did their personal best time, but it's last. Third at the Olympic trials is last.
Wow. So let's dive right in and talk about the Olympic trials a few weeks ago. What were some of the biggest stories, in your opinion, that came out of the Olympic trials?
Yeah, well, lots of stories, right? I think the first story that a lot of people who were following the trials, and you and I as swim geeks, right? This was the first trials since, honestly, since 2000. So we're talking about 21 years, no Michael Phelps. His first trials was in 2000. That's back when I was living in Switzerland. And actually, kind of a funny side story that I'd love to share with you about Michael Phelps is I was coaching this kid. I still remember his name, named Alex Holdridge. And he was living in Geneva, Switzerland, where I was coaching. And he was born. When you coach in Europe, you never talk about how old someone is. You talk about their birth year. Everything's about what year you're born. It's just funny. It's just a different way how they approach things. So, you go to a swim meet, and an age group swim meet here, it's like the 11-12s. Well, but back then it was like the born 85, 86. And I only say that because Michael Phelps was born in 1985, and I had a young man named Alex Holdridge who was born in 1984. So he was similar age back then. And he was from North Baltimore Aquatic Club, NBAC, which is, was Michael Phelps's team. And Alex, this boy, Alex, he was kind of an expat. His dad had a job in Geneva for 2 years. So he was living in Geneva and he was swimming in my group, which was the junior group back then. And this was 1999. He said, "Coach," and we spoke in English. So most of the kids in my group were French speaking, but he and I spoke in English. And he, "Coach, there's a kid on my team, Michael Phelps. You're going to know that name." And I was like, Michael Phelps, never heard of him. That was in 1999. And then lo and behold, in 2000, this young kid, Michael Phelps, kind of a dorky kid with these long arms and these ears that stuck out a little bit. And no offense, Michael, if you're listening, right? We hope he's listening to this podcast. And he made the Olympic team and finished 5th. So that was back in 2000 in Sydney. So people, wow, he was 15 years old, made the Olympic team, made the final, right? One event, 200 fly. That was it. Of course, he made the semifinal and made the final. And then we've had him in every trial since then until this trials, right? Which should be 20 years, but it's 21 years. So I think that was, not to go off on, but not having Michael Phelps is kind of a big deal. And, they talked about it if you listened in, but it's huge. But the flip side of it is we owe him everything, right? We owe him everything that we are watching the trials and that it's on NBC, and, Olympic trials would not have been what it was without Michael Phelps. So that was probably the first story. And who's going to fill his shoes, right? So if you look at that, one of his sort of staple or his go-to events was that 200 fly, and the guy who won it was Zack Harding, right? Who's Zack Harding? He's just kind of this crazy kid who I think he swam at Auburn. I don't even know, to be honest. But he made the Olympic team, right? And it's an event that honestly we're a little weak. We're not as good as the rest of the world. There's a guy in Hungary who has the world record right now, who broke Michael Phelps's world record. So, we're missing a few links in those events that Phelps swam. So, we've got these two guys. The other guy who made the team, Gunnar Bentz from swam at Georgia and swims with Jack Bowerly. So, they'll do well. Will they win a medal? We'll see, right? We always step up. That's the nice thing, is the Americans always step up. But you talk about other stories out of these trials. Sorry if I just keep going.
Oh, Tony. Keep going. I'm listening.
Is the other event of Michael Phelps is the 200 IM, right? He was the man. And the funny thing is, even though Michael Phelps won all the medals in the 200 individual medley that he won, he didn't have the world record, right? He had it at one point, but it was back and forth between him and Lochte, right? So the crazy story from this trials is no Phelps, but you've got Lochte. Lochte makes the final, but then doesn't make the team at 30. I believe he's 36. He's born in 1984. Again, you got to know what year people are born. So yeah, he's 36 going on 37. Has announced that he's not retiring. So that's also good news for the swimming world. And if you think about it, Tony, if there was no Michael Phelps, Ryan Lochte would have been the greatest swimmer of all time.
I know. Yeah.
You talk about Michael Phelps's 28 medals. Ryan Lochte has 18. So 18 medals. We don't even talk about it because it's nothing. But if there was no Michael Phelps, Ryan Lochte would have been, even though he had his misfortune with, the unfortunate story in Brazil when he, told that whole tobacco, and we don't want to talk about that because it was a mistake. He made a mistake and he's more than apologized for it. And but you've got this guy, but now we've got a Michael Andrew. So that's probably the story I would like to talk about is Michael Andrew, right? This kid who went professional as a 14, 15-year-old. He's now 22 years old, was always known as a sprinter, right? 50 free, 50 fly, dabbled in breaststroke a little bit. And now he made the team. And for me, I consider it to be probably one of these stories of Olympic swimming is he made the team in the 100 breast by breaking the American record. So he's the fastest American breaststroker ever without the super suit. So put a little star on that too, right? We'll talk about that. He makes the team in the 200 IM, and then he makes the team in the 50 free. just the craziest events, right? And, you know, Phelps, 200 IM, 200 fly, 200 free, 100 fly. They sort of kind of go it, even though it was insane to think of. Well, now you have this new Michael Andrew, who makes the team in these three totally different events. Now, I'll tell you, I'm going to pat myself on my own back a little bit and say, I've been telling people for years, he's been great at all 450s. He's been the junior world champion in 3 of the 450s. So that being the 50 breast, the 50 fly, the 50 free. Back in 2017, I think he was junior world champion, held a couple junior world records, and has always been really good in backstroke. In fact, at these trials, he swam with a lot of criticism from the swimming fans. Why does his father, who's his coach, have him swim the 100 backstroke? Well, he's back in March of this year, he went 50.8. If he had done that time, he would have made the Olympic team in the 100 back, second place to Ryan Murphy, who's world record holder. But just a casual 50.8.
How is that possible? You know, the old saying that if you try to do too many things, you end up doing none of them well. How is it possible that a swimmer can be that good at strokes that are that different from each other?
You know, I mean, that's just the talent that he is. They use a very interesting, and I'm not sure if you've spoken on some of your other podcasts about not only with swimming, but kind of in a lot of the sports with these ultra short race pace training. In swimming, it's definitely a small, almost cult-like group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is, just to, and again, apologies to anyone who's listening if they've already heard, but the science is simple. You train incredibly short distances at race pace. So they'll take a race. So for Michael, one of his events is the 100 breaststroke, and they'll train the 425s of that stroke at race pace. Basically it's incredibly scientific, but incredibly boring. And again, not belittling or speaking ill about it. It's just, you just do 25s. And when you miss one, you'll rest one, you'll try again. If you miss 2, you're done. You're basically done for the day. And
Wow.
they've built up a science where they'll do 10, 20, 30 repeats at race pace, whatever they have on, and he does it. So I know, for example, for training for the 200 IM, which they've been training for, they'll do 20 50s, 5 of each stroke at race pace. So they'll do 5 50s of butterfly, 5 50s of backstroke, 5 50s of breaststroke, and 5 50s of freestyle, again in that order, the individual medley order, and they'll hit them all at race pace. Now, race pace being, what they do is they put a goal. Right now, the goal that they have in mind is 153, which is under the world record. So they're constantly training to break the world record. They've been successful. And years ago when he was doing well in these 50s, going back to what I was originally starting to speak about, is, he was doing and I said, boy, if he ever does a 200 IM, he's going to break the world record. Well, we're at the cusp of him breaking the world record. Now, interestingly is, you see a lot of, there's always room for criticism, right? And you have people saying, well, wow, he dies in his freestyle. He's 1.2 seconds under world record pace at the 150 meter mark, and he dies. I said, well, one day he's not going to die. And when he doesn't die, so they know that. And I think, they welcome the criticism, they welcome the critiquing, but they also will welcome the world record when they hit it. And I think, everyone going into this Olympic Games with the 200 IM and Michael Andrew, everyone is chasing him. He is the one to beat. He's the fastest in the world right now. The world record holder, Ryan Lochte, is not on the team, so, even if Ryan had made the team, he would have been sort of the one, what's Ryan going to do? He's
Right.
the world record holder, 154. He's not there. So now it's, you got to beat Michael Andrew, and they're not, I was speaking with you when we were not on this podcast, Tony, and I was out with him and his family, very, very humbled to work with them on another sort of recovery thing that we work on together. But they said, they're not changing their plan. Chase him, and if you beat him, you beat him chasing him. So
Mm-hmm.
it'll be a good win for whoever wins. And if it's Michael, it's Michael, and if he breaks the world record. But they're training to, they only need a little bit, right, on the freestyle. So, and you can't critique his freestyle too much because he's also swimming 21.5, making the Olympic team and beating Nathan Adrian, Anthony Irvin, the Olympic champion, who is in his 40 now, so he didn't make the Olympic team. I think a lot of people probably thought he had an outside shot, but Michael Andrew, he's got the freestyle. He's just got to put it together. So,
yeah.
And you asked for, so that's a big story for me, Michael Andrew.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a lot of, Michael Phelps retiring has left room for a lot of swimmers, right? He swims 8 events in 2008. So there's eight people who need to step up, or 4 people in 2 events. So there's a lot of, new faces. There are some veterans like Ryan Murphy, who's our 100, 200 backstroker.
And of course, we have to talk about Caleb Dressel.
Yeah, well, so that's sort of the next. Fortunately, we have, in 2016 in Rio, Caleb Dressel was, a new, fast, young swimmer, but since then he's proven to be what a lot of other swimmers say is he's the top male swimmer in the world, and he's proven that at the last World Championships.
Yeah, so he won a couple medals in the last Olympics as a relay swimmer, correct?
Right.
Correct.
So he is already an Olympic gold medalist, and now going into these Olympics, he won 3 events at the trials easily. Won 3 events, and if you had the opportunity to watch, any of you that are listening that did, he kind of won those events and always had kind of a smirk on his face, just kind of like, wow, just stay tuned, kind of a stay tuned. 1500 free, he's top in the world, even though Michael Andrew he'll be chasing him, and that's kind of a fun event for Michael Andrew, but he can't beat Caleb Dressel. And in the 100 fly, Caleb Dressel is just in a world of his own. He's in a world of his own. He swims 49, which for those of you that know times, I mean, that's just, it's just, I think 2 or only 3, I believe 3 or 4 people have ever, I think only 3, I think, Michael Kavich back in the day with the super suit on, Michael Phelps, and Caleb Dressel, the only ones to ever go 49. So, he's in uncharted waters. It's going to be real hard to beat him in the 100 fly. But, Caleb will swim a multitude of relays. He'll swim the 4x100 freestyle relay. He'll swim the 400, and the neat thing with Michael Andrew and Caleb, and again, sorry, Tony, just to go off on these tangents.
Go ahead.
They have combinations for the medley relay. Michael can swim. He can swim the breaststroke as the American record holder, but he can also swim, the butterfly. I mean, we don't, Michael Andrew is one of the fastest 100 butterflies, and then you put Caleb in the freestyle. So they have a lot of different strategies that they'll be able to use in the morning.
Now, are they coming up with those strategies now, or are they going to come up with them next week, or do you think they've already been strategizing on these relay combinations?
They're strategizing now. The U.S. team reported yesterday to Hawaii for about a 12-day camp. Some coaches getting to know each other. I know, again, I was with Peter Andrew, and he's like a kid in the candy store, right? He's a man in his early 50s and has never been on an Olympic team and never really been part of a staff like he's a part of now. So he will play a major role so they are strategizing now. Also interesting what they're strategizing on is we have the mixed relay for the first time ever at the Olympic Games. So that's another medal that these athletes can be, including Caleb. So Caleb can be put on the mixed medley, the 4x100, the standard men's medley, plus the 4x200. A lot of people saw Caleb swim the prelims of the 200. And my bet is that you will see him swim on the relay. If he's swimming well, he will swim on the relay at the Olympic Games on the 4x200. How can you not? I mean, you read a lot of the stuff on Swim and Swimming World, and these swimming things are not as good as Tony's podcast, by the way, I have to say. But you read them, and everyone has their opinion, and I've been in that position. to put people on Olympic relays, and it's not easy, but sometimes you have to say, well, I'm going to take a little bit of you got to go with your gut. And sometimes your gut says, well, I'm going to put Caleb Dressel on the 4x200. I mean, the guy can swim 144. I know his best is probably 146, but Caleb Dressel is uber talented and can handle the stress. And if his coach, Greg Troy, who's one of the U.S. assistant coaches, but we all know that Greg Troy has a lot of pull on that decision. I think they'll say, well, you need to put Caleb on that relay. So yeah, Caleb Dressel, Kieran Smith, who will be on that. He's a new kid, a kid from Connecticut. I've seen him grow up in this area, going to meets, and I saw him a few years ago. It was probably 2017 actually, and his coach, or his club coach from his home team, which is Ridgefield Aquatic Club, RAC, down in Connecticut. If you ever if anybody out there ever wants to learn about swimming, you look up his coach. Emmanuel is his name. He is a genius, a very talented coach. And, Kieran, tall kid, he's about 6'6", 6'7". He's a giant kid, but, you could already see back then this kid will make an Olympic team one day. And here he is, pounding on the door of a couple American records as well, the 200 free and the 400 free. He already has the American record in the 500, some insane time. It was 4:06 or some crazy.
Wow.
I feel bad I don't have it, but anyone looks it up. He has the American record in the 500 yard freestyle in the yards pool. So uber talented. And yeah, so our US team, albeit just kind of a lot of the veterans, Matt Grievers, Anthony Irvin, Nathan Adrian, Ryan Lochte not making the team. I think most of those guys will retire. I'm excited to hear that Ryan Lochte won't, but they'll step up. Great coaching staff.
Excellent. Now, can you talk about the ladies? Katie Ledecky has been doing some unbelievable things over the last few years.
Right. So, Katie Ledecky, what do we say? I mean, she's in the 200 free, the 400 free, the 800 free, the 1500. She'll be on at least one relay. I don't think they'll put the pressure on Katie for the 4x100. She doesn't need it. Or we have too many sprinters, and quite honestly, Katie that's just maybe about 100 meters too short for Katie. So, but she's got the 2, the 4, the 8, the 15.
Yeah, she goes long. Yeah, 15 meters.
And I tell you what, I mean, she's amazing, right? But she's got this Australian girl, Artemis. I don't say her name right, but there's a young lady from Australia who is pushing her, in every one of those events, from the 2 to the 15. And, and again, anyone watched, we saw a little 15-year-old girl, Katie Grimes, make the Olympic team in the 800. Or was it the 1500? No, it was the 800. And, a 15-year-old, another Katie, right? So
15 years old.
Yeah, 15-year-old Katie Grimes from the Sandpipers of Nevada. And if anyone watched this Olympic trials, it's really interesting that the Sandpipers of Nevada had 3 ladies make the Olympic team. One this Katie Grimes in the 800. They had another girl, Erica Sullivan, in the 1500. And then another young lady, I believe she made the team in the 4x200. So that's a team that trains. When you have young ladies making the team in those events, that's not a team that's doing USRPT like Michael Andrew. That's a team who's putting their heads down and going up and down the pool a lot and fast. So, for the triathletes who are listening, and in fact, a little side note about this Katie Grimes. About a month ago, I was down in Fort Myers at the US Open Water Nationals. That girl did every race. She did the junior 5K, the open 10K, and I think she did the junior 7.5K in 4 days. So she is a girl who takes it on the teeth probably every day, and it showed. And she deserves that Olympic qualification. So, and then there's a lot of other big names who had some, Simone Manuel, who when she did not make the
100,
not only did she not make the individual spots, first or second 100, she didn't even make the relay. But fast forward to the end of the meet, I think everybody in the building was holding their breath for her to make that team and just get second, right? And not only did she get second, but she won it and kind of put a stamp on it. And I know that the other sprinter for the U.S. team, Abby Weitzel, who won the 100, was swimming right next to her. I think she was more happy that Simone made the team and beat her than Abby. I think that was a great kind of really shows you how the U.S. trials, people aren't racing each other. They're just racing for one of those spots. And when you make it, you're elated and happy for your teammates that make and get to wear that Team USA cap with you. But now a little thing that, I know just again, not only knowing the coaches, the women's coach, Greg Meehan, who's also her home coach, you'll see Simone. She's on the team, right? So even though she didn't make the top 6 spots, you'll see her on that relay. Yeah. And what they'll probably do is that's a real hard talk, right? With the girls who are 5th and 6th. But, the girls who are 5th and 6th, they're not guaranteed to swim on that relay. They're called a relay alternate.
Yeah.
And, probably one of those girls, this is just my gut, and I wouldn't be shocked. And, I'll bet you a coffee on it, Tony, an iced coffee, that you'll see Simone swim it in the morning, and she'll have to swim fast. But if she swims fast, like I know she will, then you'll see her at night as well. And that means there'll be a few girls who are out there on that team who won't swim. And, that's tough. That's tough. But, that's what this is about, right? And, we'll see. Simone might just say, look, and she can, right? She'll say, coaches, I'm here to do the 50. I don't want to take anyone's spot. So, she may do that. We'll see. It's going to be real interesting. But, when you've got a gal like Simone Manuel in your stable, right? I always talk about racehorses. It's hard to not race that racehorse. So we'll see what she does. Maybe they'll swim her on the mixed medley relay to give her a shot. There's all kinds of things. I don't think Simone is only going to swim the 50. That's my guess.
But the 50, most people don't realize this. It's such a hard event. And most of those sprinters, they're going off the block doing 50 meters as hard as they can on no breath.
No, they're not. When you look at the top, they're doing a no breather, right? The top sprinters, and there's a few different schools of thought. It's like, oh, if you take a breath, you slow down your technique. Mm-hmm. I'm sort of on the fence on that, because these swimmers are so perfect that even when they breathe, it's not going to affect. But I think it's more of kind of a mental thing when you teach yourself. And I did as a sprinter. I was a sprinter myself, and you kind of teach yourself to do that. It's more of a mental thing where, how tough are you to do a no breather?
Certainly a tough event. Now, what do you think about the swimmer Natalie Hines?
Yeah, so Natalie Hines, that's another neat story. And, because Simone has kind of been the poster woman for the African American, the black female athlete. Correct. And now you have Natalie Hines, and Simone Manuel is a specimen, right? She's a tall girl, and Natalie Hines towers.
Yeah, I think she's 6'3" or something like that.
Yeah, she's huge. Another Florida girl who's been training in Georgia. I know she is a product of the Florida program, but has been training for a little bit of time with Jack Bowerly in Georgia. But she's a stud, and she's been there, right? She's been kind of in that 6th, 7th, 5th, 6th, and now she had a great meet. You have a great meet, you make the Olympic team. So she's going to be a neat addition to the team. Even though she's a rookie on the Olympic team, she's a veteran sprinter. So, I'm sure she'll have her nerves, once the games start and she gets in her first race, but she'll be fine. Not only because of her experience, but because of the coaches she's worked with, right? Her coaches have been Greg Troy and Jack Bowerly. I don't know. I don't think you and I have enough fingers and toes for how many Olympic medals those two guys have won. So she'll be a great addition to the team. And the other sprinter, of course, Abby Weitzel, who has some Olympic experience, some world championship experience, American record experience. So we have a real good squad of sprinters and distance swimmers. And now, again, Tony, some other, new people. this young woman in the 400 IM, and I feel bad I don't even know her name. Who a young new swimmer to the 400 IM, taking the spot, filling the shoes of Elizabeth Beisel, and a new 100 butterflyer, right? This young gal, Tori Husk is her name, broke the American record. So you think of, she's a rookie. Well, she's a rookie with the American record, fastest 100 flyer ever for the US, 55 and some change. I mean, and again, so fortunate. I took my group, Gator Swim Club, down to a meet in Richmond about 6 weeks ago, and one of my athletes who swam right next to her in the 100 freestyle. And honestly, full disclosure, I'd really never heard of the girl. They're like, oh my God, Tori Husk is here. I'm like, who's Tori Husk? 6 weeks ago. Well, I will tell you, as much of a swim nerd and swim geek, and in fact, I had heard of her. Her name is Victoria, but they call her Tori. And I had heard of her. I just had to kind of put a face to the name.
Got it. Yeah.
And she's out of Arlington, Virginia. And tell you what, she if you watched her meet, she was also in the 100 free. She was also in the 200 IM. She was in the 200 fly. This girl can swim. And, she's a new, what better to have a new swimmer that's the fastest American ever in that event in the 100 fly. So, and we've got Reagan Smith, who was a was an interesting story, world record holder in the 100 and 200 back before the meet started. But a couple days before the 100 back, an Australian girl broke the world record in the 100 back. So now she's the American record holder in the 100 back, makes the team, but then doesn't make the team in the 200 back, and but makes the team in the 200 fly. So another kind of story, you've got the world record holder in the 200 back, or did I get that flipped around for the 100 back? And she made the team in one event, not the other event, but made it in the 200 fly. And then we have Haley Flickinger in the 200 fly, who is another Georgia product, but has been training, believe it or not, her current coach is Bob Bowman. So she's been training down in Arizona, makes the team in the 200 fly. Well, let's just say that she's going to have a lot of good information and training going into these next, 3.5-4 weeks getting ready. And he's on the staff as well. So Bob Bowman is going to be one of the assistant coaches with the women's team. He placed 2 athletes on the team with another story, which is Alison Schmidt, right?
Schmitty.
Schmitty, Olympic champion in the 200 freestyle back in 2012 and in London. And, her neat story is not only making her 5th Olympic team. Wow. 5th Olympic team, but also, she's a real story for all of us to know about, with some battling mental health issues, had some real struggles with mental health. And, if you follow her story, or anyone who, I encourage anyone, I won't bore anyone, or not bore, because it's not boring at all. In fact, it's inspiring.
Yeah, I read about it. She's got a very inspiring story. What about Lily King, the breaststroker?
Yeah, I mean, what can you say? She is, she talks the talk, but she walks the walk, right? So, the famous story back from Rio was the finger at the Russian who had been, Tony, I mean, caught doping once, caught doping twice, but 3 times, it starts to be. So I think, I admire Lily for waving her pointer finger. I probably would have chosen a different finger to wave at her.
She is actually pretty funny. If you ever follow her on her social media, particularly her Instagram, she has a very big personality and is very funny. She's very entertaining. So when this is all said and done, and of course, I'm just going to watch and look for some amazing stories from athletes across the world. But when this is all said and done, where do you think the United States is going to fall in medal count?
I think we're going to have, some there's going to be the competition from Australia. I mean, Great Britain, on the men's side, the two things I can tell you about the men's side is their breaststroker, Adam Peaty, is untouchable. So as great as Michael Andrew is, and I hope he goes 57, he'll go 57 to win either the silver or the bronze medal. Adam Peaty is untouchable unless he's disqualified.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not trying to be arrogant or, be anti-American, but he is just a specimen in the 100 breaststroke. And the British men on the 4x200 freestyle relay, we are going to have to really have some kind of, and like I said, they're going to have some kind of wild card, like Caleb Dressel dropping a 144 or a 143, which he can do in order to beat the Brits, because they're really strong and they've got some great women. And there's a few Hungarian swimmers, Katinka Hosu on the women's side, though she's, hasn't maybe dominated in the last year or two. I think that, I think we can say that COVID has been the shadow of a lot of these athletes shining through this last year and a half. But, I think when it's all said and done and the dust settles, I think we'll stand atop the medal, totals. But I think some of our young kids will step up, but I think some young kids from other countries, and I think the Japanese, because it's in Japan, when there's, if we look at the press today, the only fans that will be in the stands are the Japanese. And I tell you what, some of those events like the 400 IM, the 200 fly, the 200 breaststroke, where the Japanese are strong, when they hear the Japanese cheering and they cheer, the Japanese are able to find a gear the last 50 meters that, and I've experienced that I've been very blessed to stand on Olympic pool decks and world championships. And when the Japanese want to go into gear 6 on the last 50, into the bonsai gear, as I call it, they do it and they win. Wow. So, I think we'll do really well. I'm excited. I'm super excited, right? It's been 5 years we've been waiting for an Olympic game. So it's time to see it happen. Yeah, and also, with probably the people listening in on this, one other neat thing is the open water swimming. I mean, open water swimming, we're good. We're probably stronger on the women's side with Ashley Twitchell and Haley Anderson than on the men's side. On the men's side, we've got Wilimowski, and I'm not sure I don't even know if we have a second men's swimmer in the 10K, but Jordan Wilimowski is certainly a stud for us on the men's side. And that 10K, I mean, open water swimming it's a whole other sport, I mean, I know they swim but these people are as tough as they come. As tough as they come.
How do you think this extra year is going to play out with some of the swimmers? I suspect with some of the swimmers will capitalize on the extra year. They peaked and felt like they could go into another training session and improve even more. But perhaps some people felt like they peaked and are coming back on the other side. How do you think that this is going to play?
I think it's going to play exactly like that. I think it's going to help some. I think it's going to hurt some. I think those that were on top and were expecting and had trained for those 4 years to peak, they've held on maybe long enough to qualify at the trials. And I think they're going to maybe end up in Tokyo and be a little flat. And again, I'm never a pessimist. I just say that, it's kind of a reality check. But I think it's given them the chance, like this swimmer, Katie Grimes, a year ago, it would have been a 14-year-old nobody. And now she's a 15-year-old on the Olympic team. I think, and I think a lot of it is, how are people going to bounce back from the coronavirus training, whether they were able to get that full training in. But I will say that I think more athletes than we realize were able to rest and recover and will actually be okay. And I think what we're going to experience is a lot of world records in different sports, a lot of world bests, a lot of unheard ofs, just because of that year of it. So I actually think it's going to play in the favor of the sports fan.
Yeah. I sort of liken it to the days when you had to take a big exam in school and you studied to peak for that exam. And then for some reason or another, you got an extra week. And because you had to hit a previous peak, you now can go beyond that and gain even more knowledge. So that's sort of the way that I look at it.
I think so. And I think a lot of athletes, especially swimming, what we know or what I know, and one third of the sports, is that people realize the break was good, good mentally as well. I know we were all stir crazy, but I think a lot of people healed. I think a lot of people learned how to recover. I think a lot of people learned how to rest. I think a lot of people learned because they didn't have anything else to do. They dabbled in things like yoga and mental training and nutrition because they finally had to. Whereas before it was like, oh, I'll get to it. Well, they finally had to. So, and now they're using it in their different forms of training for not only swimming, but other sports. And yeah, so actually, if I had to pick whether it's going to be more hurtful or more helpful to what we see, I think it's going to be more helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so I want to be mindful of your time, Chris, and I want to ask you some questions about KAATSU, which is something that you've been involved with. But before that, I want to take advantage of your swimming knowledge and ask you the question that is probably the most common question that I get from aspiring triathletes, and open water swimmers. And that's, how come I don't see a big response from my swim training? Or how come my swimming is not improving? Some variation of the same question. And so how would you answer that question for the triathlete that might ask you that question?
Right. That's a great question. And, we could talk about that for hours, right? I'd love to. I feel pretty good about the answer. I'm going to give you two answers. And Tony, you might remember this. I was very fortunate when I spent my time in Switzerland to work with quite a few triathletes. I mean, people say, well, why are the Swiss so good at triathlon? And I'll tell you why the Swiss are so good at triathlon. One is they have access to training. So, it's a country that is able to, able to have nice bikes, have nice places to train, have nice clubs. So, it's sort of a crappy answer to say, but it's like it's a sport that costs a little bit of money and they can afford it. So I think that's one reason why. Also, I believe in Switzerland, there's the mindset of, they work hard. They're they're people who understand how to work hard. And so those are kind of why I believe the Swiss are so good. And I worked with a young man. I worked with a gentleman named Mike Agro, and I coached him for a few years. I was his swim coach for his triathlon, and he ended up in 2011. He finished ninth he was sixth in the Hawaiian Ironman. And we actually did some pretty radical things with his swimming. And so I'll kind of share that with you and he did not come from swimming. He came from bikes. He rode bikes and cycling in Europe, you already know, it's insane, right? It's like here, soccer, right? And every little kid plays soccer. Well, every kid in Europe, learns to ride a bike and has some kind of affiliation with, everyone watches the Tour de France, right? So what Mike and I did is kind of what I'll share with you in this is, I think the first thing is that triathletes don't balance. And again, I'm not trying to say I have the answer, but I believe that they don't balance their swimming with their they're trying to do all three sports, right? So I think it's finding the correct. Now, what's the correct balance? I think that's different for each athlete. Correct balance of swim time, because the swimming improvements, especially from a non-swimmer, are very difficult, right? We know that. Are we going to work on technical work? Are we going to work on, kicking, right? And what do I get as a swimming coach? A triathlete who says, well, I don't want to learn to kick because I don't want to fatigue my legs. Like, right. But you should improve your kick a little bit. So that's what Mike and I did. What we did, a real simple formula, is as a non-swimmer, we did three things. We worked on his kick, and here's how we did it. You ready for this? We did 100 kick for time every 10 days. Now, we did kicking, But every 10 days we did 100 kick for time, long course.
With a board or
with,
no board?
With a board. And let me tell you why. And everyone, all the swim coaches out there are going to say, oh, well, that's so. And the reason why is I wanted him to have his head up. I wanted him to get on his kickboard, and I wanted him to just grind 100 kick. Yeah. I wanted him to put his body in a little bit of a compromised technical position. So I actually wanted him to be in that non-swimming position because I wanted him to just get on that kickboard, be able to watch the clock with his eyes and get better. And we did it every 10 days, but we did that for 2 years, right? So we did a lot of hundreds kick for time. Now we did other kicking sets, but every 10 days he knew, I got to have 100 kick for time.
And for those listeners that don't know swimming lingo, when he says for time, that means as fast as possible.
Yeah, as fast as possible, right? And now I can even tell you, because I remember when he first did it, Tony, he was maybe kicking long course, right? Maybe 220 for 100 kick on a board. And it was ugly. I mean, it was just, bicycle kick, knees. It was now we worked on it. We improved it. But he knew now at the end, right before it, now he was down to like a 127, 100 meter kick for time. So he really improved over a minute in his kick time. That's one thing we did. We also did about every 10 days, a 400 meter freestyle for time, just a 400 to test his, how, and we didn't do it like we shifted it with the 100 kick. And then the other thing we did is a 50 freestyle for time. So we worked on his speed, we worked on his kick, and we worked on a little bit of his endurance. A 400 is starting to get it, it's not a 1500, but at least we knew if his 400 time was improving, we knew that his 1500 would be better. We knew that his Olympic distance would be better. It was sort of the shortest distance that we used. Now that was something that he and I used. It was our science. All three of those things got better. So what I want to say is I think a lot of triathletes, and if I'm speaking illy towards anyone's science out there, it's not, this is what I believe in, is I think a lot of triathletes are wasting their time doing, I'm gonna piss off a lot of people here, Tony, doing too much of a swim practice. I think triathletes should for their to have a great workout, learn to do flip turns. I think they should, but they do not need to learn to be a world-class IMer. I think they need to do IM because I think it'll diversify and I think it'll work on some of the different muscle groups of their workout. But I think they need to be better in freestyle. Freestyle. Yeah. So what are the pieces of that? Working on the speed of freestyle, working on the endurance of freestyle, working on the kick, working on the components of pull, and then all the drills that go with it. But I think it's about designing. Now, everyone's a little different, right? For what they need for that design. So that was kind of a long-winded answer.
No, I think you're absolutely right on the balance issue. It's one of the main things that triathletes do is that they don't swim enough. They may swim once a week or twice a week and just sort of punt on the swim training and figure that they could, just make it up on the bike and the run.
Well, and that's what I think. I think there are some triathletes out there who are not swimmers who are like, I'm never going to get better. So I'm not going to, I believe, again, this is my belief, and I have seen it. If, let's just say arbitrarily, right? Like, let's just say that the swim time they currently do for the, whether they're doing Olympic distance or Ironman distance, right? Or in all the things in between, half Ironman. Let's just say that 10 minutes, as a poor swimmer, 10 minutes is the time that they swim currently, right? Mm-hmm. And they say, well, I'm not going to waste my time with getting better at swimming if I'm going to go a 9:45. Well, let me tell you though, let's imagine that 15-second improvement is with saving a lot of heartbeats on the swim because they've improved their technique or they've improved their kick. Right. So maybe they're 15 seconds faster on the swim, but maybe just by improving, again, this is a hypothetical, they've improved saving 20% of their heartbeats over the entire course of the race, right?
Right.
Because they're not like that crazy triathlete, poor swimmer that, you know what I mean? So that's what I believe. I think it's thinking a little bit outside of the box. And I've had that conversation with a future athletes, teaching them to float better. I mean, you know me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe if they can learn to float better already, that's a game changer for them.
Yep.
So, start from floating to a subtle kick to easy freestyle. And then, if you're 15 seconds, but if you're 15 seconds faster with conserving 20% of your entire heart, I don't know if that makes sense. The heartbeats you're going to put into that swim that you could put into your bike and run, well, then that's a whole different game, right? You get onto your bike feeling fresh after your swim, rather than just being hammered from the swim because you got out, 38th and you got kicked in the teeth and you're just beat up and you're already in the back of the transition. And, and I know how, important just the transitions are. You get out of your swim and you're a little bit more, good in your mind for your transition to your bike and getting on your bike feeling good. I mean, Tony, and I've seen you on your bike, man. You got to be able to hammer on your bike.
You got to.
You have to hammer on your bike. And if you're already gassed from the swim, well, that's what I'm talking about. Let's get a little better in the swim so you're not so gassed for the bike, and then so you can at least not have to walk, run on the run, right?
Yeah, and speaking of Swiss triathletes, Caroline Stefan, an amazing triathlete with a swim background who can put it all together, swim, bike, and run.
Oh, right? God, yeah. Caroline, and I coached her in swimming. Coached her in swimming. She's a swimmer, right? But man, she could hammer the bike and hammer the run.
Okay, so let's finish up and talk about KAATSU. What is KAATSU? What have you been doing with it? And how has it benefited the swimmers and athletes that you've been working with?
So probably the number one thing for me, and anyone who ever wants to find out about it, just if I could do a plug, www.kaatsu.com, and it's KAATSU. Probably the biggest thing for me is the recovery. A lot, it's so what it is, it's pneumatic bands that you wear on either your upper arm or your upper leg, never using them at the same time. And we use it for recovery. So what happens is you connect these pneumatic bands. They're thin elastic bands that are very, when I say elastic, they really stretch to the shape and size of your upper arms or upper legs. And they inflate with air, and it's connected to a small device called the Cycle device. The Cycle 3 is the current product that I say we because I'm part of the company, and it inflates and deflates. It's actually KAATSU is ka means additional, and atsu is pressure in Japanese, and the reverse of that is joatsu when it deflates. And it acts as it actually pools the blood in your arms or your legs, again depending on what you're using it for. A little bit similar to, I'm sure a lot of people know the Normatec boots or the recovery pump boots. A very similar. In fact, they we're not competitors with them. It's a very similar science, but it acts as a lymphatic flush, and more importantly, a flush of the arteries, veins, all of the capillaries that are distal to the bands. Right. And you flush out all of the metabolic waste that you accumulate during sport. And actually what we've most recently learned, which is super interesting for anyone listening, is we always think about, everyone talks about lactic acid, right? Well, more you talk about lactate, right? You create lactate in the blood, and actually what people are learning is lactate is actually good. Your body actually uses it as a fuel. But what we want to do, it's all the metabolic waste that comes from that lactate, additional, metabolics that I won't bore people with. So what this KAATSU device does is it helps flush. So after, you have let's just say you do an Olympic distance triathlon and you're toast right after that. You've used everything, and you see people like collapsing to the ground. You get them on the system, the KAATSU system, on their legs especially, and I know you've tried it yourself as well, Tony. And it just creates this flush. It gets real tight, right? And over the course of a cycle, you can do any number of cycles up to 30 minutes, and it's 30 seconds of pressure on, 5-second release, then 30 seconds of more pressure, 5-second release, and it goes in 8 steps. what we call steps now, and then you can do another cycle of 8 steps. And again, depending on what you use or the protocols you use, it basically stimulates this incredible metabolic, pneumatic, this flush of the lymphatic and the circulatory system.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, the athletes I've worked with, and that's why I mentioned the track and field team, because we just recently over Zoom taught there are 5 people who just made the Olympic team in track and field, super excited about that, who are using it after their races for a recovery. So the recovery is huge right now, and that's what we're primarily focused on. Now there's you can also use it to warm up. A lot of the swimmers I use, and Michael Andrew is one of our top athletes who uses it not only to warm up, but to warm down. So it's to prep. He really likes the words he uses. It gives him that kind of the tactile feel before he sprints. So before his 200 IM and his 50 free, he'll do a couple KAATSU cycles on his arms, gets the blood pumping into the all those distal capillaries of the fingers, and he really likes the way it feels. So he uses it to get that feel before his race, and then he'll use it as a flush after, mostly on his legs. So, that's kind of the quick, brief science on it. But I encourage anyone who would ever just look it up and kind of see, and really for triathlons, especially, just because they use everything, right? And after a triathlon, I know one triathlon in my life, right, where I unfortunately forgot to put my shoes in the so I ended up doing a barefoot. It was a little tiny triathlon. Don't worry. It was only like a half kilometer run after I did it barefoot. But so incredible for all athletes, especially triathletes, to get a real good flush.
So some of the alternatives that people are utilizing in this space, you mentioned Normatec, which are massage boots, and so-called compression garments, which to me are nothing more than socks that just go all the way up to your knees. There's no good evidence behind these so-called compression socks. So how does KAATSU compare with some of the alternatives that are being utilized in this space?
I think it's the gold standard. It's and I'm not saying that just because I'm attached to the company, just with the people, the athletes, and athletes of all shapes, sizes, ages, and abilities, right? I think it's the gold standard. The science behind it is backed by 40 years of science. It was invented in Japan. And really, it's because not only when you put it on your arms or legs is it working to flush the body parts distal to the band, there's a whole systemic effect that there's a release of growth hormone and IG1, insulin growth factor, and a lot of other hormones that the body uses to not only recover but to heal. There's an adrenaline aspect to it. After you do a KAATSU session with the correct protocols, a lot of people are like, wow, I feel like I'm really awake, and I feel like I can think better. So I really think it's some of those other, I think a lot of those things are good. I think the different recovery pump and Normatec and all the generic ones that come, they're good. They feel good. It's kind of like a massage, foot massage. Massage is good. Ice baths are good. All the different sorts of stim and there's sort of some of the kooky stuff that's out there, right? Like the gels you can put on. I really, I believe in this, but I think the best way is to speak to those who used it and have had results from it, and not speak to me because some people might think I have something financially to gain from it. I really don't. I'm a big believer of it and use it with my athletes. So I think it's kind of the gold standard and something that's really under the radar. A lot of people don't know about it more and more. And I think with this Olympics, we have some really neat things coming up with some projects with the IOC. And I think if it goes through, I think a lot more people will know about it. So
Well, this conversation has flown by, and this discussion was like many of our discussions we've had on the pool deck, and there's so many more topics, Chris, that I need to have a conversation with you about, and so hopefully we can get you back on the podcast to have some more lively discussions about swimming.
For anytime. Yeah, anytime.
And in the interim, I'm looking forward to seeing some unbelievable swimming in the coming weeks at the Olympics, and looking forward to talking to you about it.
Yeah, we can talk after that. And yeah, I encourage everyone to, not only watch swimming, of course, Tony, you and I will watch it, but, the related sports, of course, triathlon will be, I love watching triathlon.
Exciting. It's going to be very exciting.
So exciting. And those, you never know, right? With triathlon,
you never know
people, but someone, one of those world's best bonks, and someone sneaks in there, and next thing you know, they're Olympic champion. It's super exciting. I'm excited for triathlon as well.
So where can people find you out on social media?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to do it a little more. So my Instagram is Swim for Chris. It's at swim, the number 4 Chris. And I'm going to try to be pushing out more stuff. I coach Gator Swim Club here in Boston. So our website is Gator Swimming. And, other than that, I encourage people, they can find me also with, like I mentioned, with KAATSU, with our team out at KAATSU. So I am on the website as the Chief Aquatic Officer. So I'm the CAO of the company. So the first and only CAO in the world. I'm the CAO.
Nice. And now that all of this COVID stuff is, we're turning a corner with it, I can see you back out there on the Masters deck.
See you breaking another indoor world record, hopefully.
Probably not anytime soon.
You have to do the double Ironman. Have you thought of that? Has that happened yet? The double Ironman.
It's a thing. All right.
Well, we got to get you hooked up with Rich Roll, because he's a good friend of mine, and you two guys could podcast.
Do you know him? Do you know him?
No. Rich and I go way back. In fact, he just was on a recent he was doing one of his podcasts, and he and I competed together in 1996 in Hungary, and we were roommates. And he mentioned a story about it. And my brother was driving home. My brother's a big Rich Roll, and my brother was like, "Wait, he's talking about my brother." And he said he was like so taken aback, he almost had to pull over and is driving home from work. So
when you get millions of podcast downloads like Rich Roll, then you'll get that type of reaction. That would be the appropriate reaction.
I'll connect you with Rich. No problem.
All right, Chris. Cool. Thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Yes, awesome.
Thanks again to Coach Chris Morgan, one of the best swimming minds you will ever meet for sure. And go follow him on his Twitter and Instagram, Swim for Chris. That's the number 4, Swim for Chris. I will put the links to his social media in the show notes, and also the link to KAATSU if you're looking to get more information about that. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. More to come. And are you excited for the Olympics, especially the swimming? Oh, I am. I definitely am. Those beautiful underwater shots, the unbelievable performances, the upsets, the crazy, unbelievable touches, tenths of a seconds apart at the wall. Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Are you excited for swimming at the Tokyo Olympics? We'll talk about it for sure.
Follow Event Horizon Endurance Sport on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter for training and nutrition programs and on-demand learning. To become a member of our Endurance Institute or for complete archive of podcasts, log on to our website, eventhorizon.tv.